各位女士、各位先生，我们就开始 Q&A. To proceed our question and answers, probably I'll allow our audience to speak in Chinese because we have a simultaneous translation. But I'm going to put my questions and some of the comments with English. OK. 所以我们就现在就开放各位您可以用，因为我们有即席的翻译，所以您如果需要可以直接问，然后用中文翻译。那另外您也可以用发言单交给我们工作人员，到时候的话我们会帮忙来做整理，然后提问。OK, now we are going to we'll open the question for the floor. OK, 我们开始，各位可以有问题。
Hi, my name is Charles from ESTC. This is a question actually directly to Mr. Sang Kyung Moon in terms of your green card program. Overall, from your opinion, so what do you think is the most the factors that driven the private sectors as well as the citizens to participate in this green card program, and how actually you were assessing the market demand prior in the beginning of this program. And also, in addition, you mentioned about the POS systems. Perhaps is the most difficult and crucial points of the entire program, especially during the year 2010. You mentioned about that the program was encounter huge obstacles for the private industries to adopt the systems. So what's the overall? Because you mentioned about, for example, just because of that difficulties, each you have to offer roughly $2,000 for each of the private sectors to be able to partner with this program. So for these years of pushing these programs, what is the initial cost, the overall initial cost to be able to achieve the success of this program we see today? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good questions. Your question is quite complicated, but I think I can say that the most important key success factors in green card system was government leadership, especially the President Lee Myung-bak and the Minister of Environment. As you may know, the previous President Lee Myung-bak announced the low carbon green growth policy in 2008. From them, we developed a lot of related policies. One of the policies was green credit card. So when he introduced the first card, he visited one headquarters of private bankers and he received the first card. It was very strong signal to the market, not only the private market but also the public organizations. Also, the minister everywhere when she visited stressed the green credit cards policy. And so the good leadership in government and my company's CEO and my staff's devoted to develop this system was the crucial factor. And to develop the infrastructure, mainly green POS system, at first it was very difficult to change the systems, and we have no money to invest in changing the system. So actually, to be honest, there was no government fund to develop this system in 2011. How can we overcome this problem? We made the bidding system to the card issuers, and some major card issuers involved the bidding, and one of the issuer, the BC card, invested 12 million US dollars to develop this POS system and to promote green credit card. That was second critical success factor. Thank you.
Yeah, from the some person give us the probably I'll add a further question about this. You also, Mr. Moni, you also mentioned in your presentation about the subsidiary from the government. Can you explain a little bit more? Because most of the green system, probably we expect the subsidiary from the government to have to push the first momentum, but you cannot rely it on a long term. So how much money the government spend on the project, and what's the philosophy behind that for that subsidiary for the system and for the stores?
Regarding green credit card system or
subsidiary system from the government, subsidiary from the government.
Yeah, actually, my company's major role is to provide the subsidy to the industry and academies to develop green technologies. The question is regarding
the money from the government.
Yeah.
Spent on the
question is the green credit card or the total
how
subsidy?
much for the subsidiary?
Actually, my company's budget is 360 million US dollars per year. 90% of the budget comes from government, and we provide all of the money to the industry.
Another question related to that is, usually for those green stores, people will think about the credibility. Is there any special contract from you or from the government with those companies? For example, if they are saying they will sell the green products, but actually they didn't do too good, is there any special contract between those stores and with the system?
We have criteria for green store designation programs. We developed the criteria based on green building schemes and some countries' retailer policies. So the criteria consist of 4 parts. One is building itself, and second is logistics. Third is to sell the green product, and the last one is promotion campaign with the KT or government to the peoples. So based on the criteria, we evaluate each stores, and we have the 2 steps or 2 kind of committee to evaluate the systems. The designation period is just 2 years. After 2 years later, we evaluate again.
Okay. We are going to also open to the floor. Probably I I'll initiate a question for Mr. Giordano because I personally try to promote the smart meters in Taiwan, but we face some problems because we have only one big Thai power company. And the problem is, the major question is, who is going to pay initially for the smart meter? Okay, because for Thai power, they say they are, because of the low price of the electricity in Taiwan, they say we are already losing money, so we cannot pay. But people say, well, you are selling the electricity. It's your obligation to pay on the smart grid. Can you give us a suggestion or comment on that kind of scenario? How can we overcome initially for this problem?
Thank you for the question. I have to say the problem you're explaining has occurred everywhere in the world in the exact same way. So deregulation that we talked about a little bit in the 1990s, the utilities were very much against this. In Japan, this debate is going on right now. The government is considering separating the utility generation assets from the transmission and distribution assets. Just a way to say that utilities like the current model and don't usually want to change voluntarily. But over the last 25 years, things have changed slowly because I think people with interesting technologies have gotten better at showing the utility why it's of benefit to both the utility and for the consumer. And if you think about the issue in three ways, you might have a little bit easier conversation. So the cost is always first, and so it's useful to come up with a cost model that tries to benefit both. And we mentioned for smart meters, the utility doesn't need to send staff to every home and might save money. Second is some of the things we talked about. If the smart grid is smart meter is installed, there are now so many interesting opportunities. After that, to bring in new technologies. And in some cases, some utilities are interested in green power, and the smart meter might also help with that. So it's simply a matter of any good negotiation trying to show why it's win-win, hopefully.
Yeah, please.
Sir, I just want to ask about some issues about local statistic informations. Because green energy is by the wind and the cloud, and the water is course on the local information is very important. So I just want to know what kind of website can we know the situations and the local information, statistics.
Yeah, that's also a very critical question. Behind all of the technologies that we presented is data and modeling. And so I have to say you're in a large group of people who are fighting every day to try to get better data. So I can give you two ideas. On the commercial or residential side, load, the main way is actually just to go to the customers. It's maybe labor and time intensive, but that's the way it's simply done now. With one addition, which is in, say, in my region in Con Edison, they are trying to make it easier for, say, if you want to develop a PV, you can get permission from the end user to see all of their billing data online. So that's become a bit more helpful. Then on the wholesale side of the market, it's country by country. So the US is fairly transparent. The federal government Energy Information Association publishes almost all production data for all types of generation, for all states, in many, many different ways. The International Energy Agency might also help you with some wholesale level information.
Okay, thank you. Probably, here is a very interesting question from Hillary of Pricewaterhouse and Cooper. I think you can speak. Okay, but I'll read it for you. If you have any further comment, probably you can give it. It's a question for Mr. Moon. If the credit card is so popular and useful, has the Korean government usually for the very hot issue, carbon credit trading? The second question is, thank you for the great sharing. While you are staying in Taiwan, are you looking for any services or products for your projects from Taiwan?
Actually, I have some friends in Taiwan, and 11 years ago, the friends invited me to this country. Then at the time, we learned from your experience regarding eco-labeling program. And in 2002, I also invited the person in EDF, Dr. Ning, to Korea, and we made the mutual recognition agreement. Although she retired from the organization, I believe that she was my very close best friend in the world. We discussed how can promote green product industry and green consumption. That's why I came here. Second, the first question was carbon related, carbon credit. I wanted to develop the credit card, not just green product, but also eco lifestyle. Now we are considering other services, not just green product buying. Yes, if we develop more detailed policies, then I can say the carbon credit also can join this credit card system.
Okay, thank you. Any further question? There's another question for the green credit card, because there's probably you will have for the consumer they will have a green credit, but sometimes for some company probably they will pay for that. So that means they were losing their profit. So what's the mechanism? They have to absorb it, or in the long term, what's benefit of what they lose? So they are going to get.
Yeah, I think good question. Actually, who is the main major player in this credit card system? I can say the manufacturer and the retailer, because they want to green marketing to sell their products, green products. How can meet green consumers' mind? If the manufacturers, retailers can provide little money to the consumer, then the individual consumer can change their behavior to buy green product. Then the manufacturer and the retailers can save their money, advertisement money. That's good point to the manufacturers who want to develop green technology or green product.
Okay. This is quite a general question for Mr. Giordano. Can you give us some information about the venture capital's investment on energy storage business? Because as you mentioned, it's a very important, especially for renewable energy. Can you give us the information about the status? And another is about the software of energy management system. the investment or the progress?
Thank you for the question. So I'll talk a little bit, just for a moment, about the venture capital side of the industry. So much of the .com Silicon Valley area moved completely into green technology. I mentioned that company Tesla. The person behind it was, I believe, a early PayPal investor who became very wealthy and moved over into the electric vehicle area. So what I would say is that it's a very healthy market in general for energy storage. At the same time, there's a lot of competition. There are a lot of people that come from the electronics industry as well that have some idea about how to make a more dense battery. So what I would say, if anyone is thinking about their own idea, to really seriously consider it. If they can really create a better product, then there's a reasonable expectation that they should be able to go forward. And getting financing always depends on the specifics. But certainly it's a growing area. And then the second part was?
The software for the energy management system.
Yes. Okay, and then the software side, that actually is a closer model to what a lot of the venture capital in Silicon Valley is looking for, and they understand it. And that was that Nest example. So a lot of the venture capital is understanding that the energy industry and power generation is a very slow-moving industry. The venture capitalists were originally hoping that they could make a quick investment, like a .com company. 2 or 3 years later, it grows 300%, and they get out. And they're realizing that really it's slow-moving. It's technology itself is difficult, and then, as we were talking about, the utilities don't always want to cooperate. So they're slowly moving into this retail side. The retail side, based on connection to the consumer, doesn't really require the permission of any utility company. So you can go into a commercial building, or you can go to the residential market with a software product. And if it's useful to the consumer, they can put it on their phone, they can control their LED lighting, they can control their thermostat, their appliances, their car. I think I just read someone's making an app to turn your car heater on in the morning. There's no limit in that area.
Okay, there's another question. I don't know if it's in your scope or not, but it's quite broad because I think the gentleman concerned about the renewable energy. There are 2 big projects. One is the solar power plant in Las Vegas in the United States. And another is European try to build a system in Sahara. Can you give us, do you know the progress, or give us some background information about that?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So in the U.S., in the West in particular, we have a huge amount of land. And the U.S. government created a very nice incentive program. So extremely large, concentrated solar plants, as well as PV projects, were installed, as well as wind projects in the West over the last few years. What I can say is that, in general, they're still, even though PV prices are falling, they're still fairly reliant on government support and assistance. The hope is that this will, over the next so many years, the technology will continue to improve and that government subsidies will continue to fade away, maybe a little bit like the green credit card. Right? It's a good example. Government is there to start a new program, little by little let the private sector take it over. So for solar and PV, solar PV for wind and similar projects, this is the same hope as well, and it's getting much closer. In terms of the Sahara project, I think that what they're referring to is what's being called the super grid, which is the idea of using the Sahara Desert area to create a massive amount of solar energy, creating transmission lines into Europe, and providing energy to Europe in this way. What I would say is, in concept, there are a lot of people very interested in this idea. Practical terms, it is a bit too expensive, and no one wants to take responsibility for spending so many billions of dollars for this energy. Solar in Europe is still being installed. Denmark, Germany in particular, and the UK has huge plans to build a lot of new wind and solar. the same result will occur, but it will happen much more at a local level, country and then state and municipality, instead of these huge projects. It's too difficult to get funding and everyone to cooperate, I think.
Okay, thank you. For Mr. Moon, just two very practical questions. First is, I combine two sheets of questions. One is, how do you combine the green credit card with the POS system? The second is, for different kind of products, they have a green credit. How do you decide how many credit a product can get?
To develop the green PRO system is quite technical approach. So I don't know the detail technical to develop the system, but I just planned the project and made a good opportunity between minister and the CEOs of the retailers, and allocate some money budget to develop the system. And sometimes I organized a workshop to develop the system. But I think it was quite very tough time to develop the green POS system, because each retailer's system was totally different. So how can we combine it? How can we modify? So we spent, I think, more than 6 or 7 months from the starting to the finish. Yes. And the second question was credit. The second question.
Green credit.
Yeah.
How do you decide?
It depends on the retailers and the manufacturers. If the manufacturer wants to provide 5% of incentive, then it's okay. And additionally, if the retailers want to give additional point, for example, 5 or 10%, then it's okay. But we guided the manufacturer. The limitation of additional incentives should be over 2 or 3% based on the consumer price.
Okay. Professor Ghosh.
Yeah, I want to add to Dr. Moon. You know that this credit points, we are also working on that. The credit points for green cards are usually or should be calculated on the basis of the carbon footprint of a particular product. So then it has a scientific meaning to add value, and depending on that, the credit points for the green card will be calculated. So this is, I don't think that has been taken care of, but it can be a project afterwards. But this is the basis by which the credit point can be given to the green cards based on the carbon footprint of a particular product. And we have a international standard on that calculation, ISO 14065. So that, of course, will help. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Also, Katie also introduced the carbon footprint labeling programs, and some of the incentive point from the carbon footprint product in green credit card. And this year we'll develop new policy regarding carbon neutral labeling system, and then we can more detailed information to the consumer when they buy product. Yes.
Yeah, I think as you mentioned, probably for most of the credit card system, they do have a lot of promotion programs in a relatively short term. And to do some promotion is easy. As you mentioned in your presentation, Mr. Nguyen, about when it will reach a stable stage. I give you one story. In the past months, I visited a very relatively expensive restaurant twice because they give me a 15% of discount for 15% discount for that kind of a restaurant is very good incentive. So I visited it twice a month. But actually, the promotion program ended this month. Okay, I don't know if they are going to, for a lifelong program for that kind of incentive, they are going to losing money or what's the philosophy before them to do that kind of thing. So to have a system and a long term in a stabilized status is very important for that kind of a green credit card system. But another probably incentive is if the mass is big enough, okay, the products and the stores and the consumers getting to pass a critical volume, probably it will into a very good a scenario. I think that's very important. Okay, for Mr. Giordano, I plus a question from the floor. I also add some of my opinion about a very interesting case. As you mentioned, like your toaster case. The biggest problem is we know the benefit behind the whole scenario, but the problem is just one product plus service, like the toaster case. The most difficult part is how can you build a business model and different stakeholders will trust the system and let it run. That probably is a very difficult part because in Taiwan we have that kind of a joke. For ESCO, energy service company, the most difficult part is whenever talking about the benefit, the consumer will say the benefit comes from my lifestyle change because I turn off the light all the way, not because your investment. How can you overcome the system?
Let me say that whatever man or woman asked that question will be very successful. Exactly the right point, the right question, and what the industry is trying to solve. I can tell the person who ever asked this question if they can help solve this, it would be very valuable. I can give you a hint or an idea. So in New York and different other regions of the US, which I know best, they have a concept that's called on-bill financing. And I'll explain it in much more detail later if you want, or you can look online. The utility in this case is basically supporting the investment. So the customer, their bill does not change, let's say for 2 years, or 3 years, or 5 years. The utility is helping then to, of course, take their fee for the electricity, but then also route a portion of the payment to the toaster seller in that case. That's the smoothest way. The government in New York is supporting this because they understand exactly this problem. And it's starting to move forward, but we don't yet have a real solution for this sort of thing. But once the idea takes hold, and we can see people thinking about it, it won't be too long before you really do start to see this type of thing. I can add that for the most part, you will see it in retrofit of large, say, building equipment. So I know that Taiwan is a huge manufacturer of LED lighting. So a manufacturer can offer their lighting for free, help save in the cost of the electricity, then run that process through the power utility to get their monthly fee. It's almost like a lease of the product. You can do it directly with the consumer, but it's definitely, if you can come up with an on-bill financing type solution, it's a really, really useful thing.
Okay, thank you. Just a question from Professor Gosh. I also would like to add on that for Mr. Moon, because it's very interesting is each age group is mostly motivated by your green credit card system, because this is very important. It's old people like myself, or those young kids like my daughter always buy things from the website. Can you give us? That's very important because it's related to the future of this kind of system.
Yeah, difficult. But I think 30 and 40 ages household keepers, women, got a lot of a portion of green credit card. So normally they have a strong mind to help their children, especially environmental healthcare issues. When they use eco-friendly product, then the mom, normally mom, took care of for their children. So I think the women like this credit card.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I remember 20 years ago when we had a study on what kind of a group of people is most green, and figure out those young mother with kids in the age of kindergarten probably is most green group, because each day when they are facing their young kids, and they think about the kids when the kids grow up will face those big problems, the climate change, the ozone layer depletion. The mother will put certain kind of action on that, buying green products. Very, very good points.
I'll just add to it, because in 2011, I had conducted one survey, the research program in India, of course, in 4 major cities. And the result of my survey was between age of 8 to 25 and above that, the awareness on environmental issues are 30% more amongst these guys. So what you are saying that just complies with our results. So that's why. And moreover, in India, what happened that for last 10 years, in primary school, even the school level up to class 12, there is a subject which has been introduced as environmental science. So in that way, all the awareness generation on environmental issues are going up for those kids, which are the next generation for the country itself. So in that way, it is really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, probably it's time for us to, last question.
Thank you, Didi Yang. Can I ask Mr. Giordano? Okay, Giordano. In your slide, that is the chart from OECD and non-OECD. Beside the other one on the right side, can you say something about the liquids? Why up to 2009, there was the world economic crisis. It raised up. Why it occupies the last year's portion about the liquids? Do you see? Do you have the handout?
Sorry, not in front of me.
The
but
handout,
if you,
yeah.
Okay, yes, we're looking, at liquids.
Yeah, you got it?
Yeah.
Okay. The second question is, talking about the investment on hardware or software, maybe you can name it as expense or expenditure. But how do you identify, how do you persuade the customers or potential customers to identify as cost or loss? You are a great salesman and you are a great MD. What I'm saying is, if it guides them to look at the plus side or minus side, the result will not just be single portion. It could be double, triple, or even quadruple. So how would you guide me how to persuade, especially the potential customers? Thank you.
Okay, so let me start with that question now. Thank you for that. I'll give you an example for people who are doing sales for, say, building managers. So building managers are extremely busy people. They have so many responsibilities for heating, hot water, cooling, and almost every day, it seems they have something that they need to fix, and they're running around. And then a salesperson comes in and says, I have a great new product for you, you'll save a lot of money. And if maybe they can save enough money, maybe they'll pay attention, but it's hard. A lot of people are trying to sell lots of things to them all the time. So what I would say is that, well, first, of course, you need a financial benefit. Second, I think this is critical, is that when you're speaking to people that are buying equipment, they have to understand you will not create any new risks for them. It's the last thing that, say, a building manager or anyone in this, whether it's retail customers or a building manager or anyone else, they want to know if I install this equipment, my life will only be easier and I won't have problems with breakdowns and people yelling at me because the air conditioner is not working properly. So financial side, but then security, safety, reliability side is also critical. And then third, if there are other additional benefits in terms of software, ease of use, somehow it just makes their life a little bit easier, less to worry about every day. You combine these three things, you have at least a better chance. Never easy, but you have a better chance. And I'm sorry, you had this other question on liquids?
No, that was on the chart.
Yeah.
The OECD and the non-OECD. That was correct.
Mm-hmm.
The other one on the right side. Following the first question, I make quick, okay? In that case, the way you guide your guidance, do you think we should really consider about the input? The differences of input and output, income and outcome. The second portion is from the consumers or the buyers for the projects. So would you clarify? Thank you.
Okay, I'll try. I don't know if I understand exactly. I'll make an attempt, and if I'm not answering your question, let me know. I put this chart here to give a basic idea of how consumers are working. Part of the idea here is that production and consumption can be seen as almost the same part of the energy equation. We talked about demand response before. There's no difference between building a 100 megawatt plant and reducing consumption by 100 megawatts. In fact, it's actually probably more efficient overall, cheaper and better for the environment to reduce energy consumption rather than trying to produce a new power plant that, again, may or may not run for the whole year. So these charts are showing that, well, if we stay at current consumption levels, the numbers are only going to go up. And it's a way to show that all of the technologies that we're talking about that we presented are only going to become more important over the years and not less. So whatever thoughts you have in terms of getting into this market are probably going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 times more valuable if you have the right idea over time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, just to close our this morning's section, I'll give you a further comment about the green market and the green consumption. Actually, I went to the Earth Summit in South Africa, the year of 2002. In that year, there's a big slogan about green consumption and production, Actually, United Nations opened a 10 years framework program, ended up last year. So last year in the Rio Plus 20, they gave us a final 10 years presentation about the green or sustainable consumption and the production, as Mr. Moon also mentioned in his presentation. That will be very important. Actually, we still have a long way to go because we are still only halfway, even though they finished the 10 years framework program, but there's still a very long way to go. The green lifestyle probably is the ultimate goal for us to go through a green market and a green consumption. It needs all of us effort and need all of us contribution. And let's give big hands to our two great presenters this morning. Thank you very much. Thank you.
好，感谢我们今天的主持人杨副执行长以及演讲者 Mr. Moon、Mr. Giordano。